Damon, Ben, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Can you give us an overview of Base and what your business model is and kind of what solutions you provide to market?
Sure, we launched in 2015 and the company is a multi-cloud managed services provider just for digital media companies. So we have a background in television and film and in television and film technology services. So as the cloud was becoming a thing and people were beginning to look at it, we decided we'd get in very early and launch pure cloud native services. And it's just gone from strength to strength. We're growing at about 120% a year and we're serving companies all around the world now. It's been quite an exciting ride.
And why are Base Media Cloud so different to other service providers? And how are you transforming the way they operate?
Well, I think if you look at other cloud service providers, they tend to be infrastructure as a service. So the big names like IBM, for example, that people are familiar with, you have to have all of the expertise to understand your workflows, the technology, how to deploy, and you have to build everything from scratch. And they can often be months of lead time because you need to do all the deals with the vendors, as well as designing and configuring and deploying everything. Whereas with us, you can just start pretty much immediately. We've had customers we've set up within an hour using the same services to deliver content globally.
Wow.
And is there a particular industry or particular customer base that you are really specialising in or focusing on at the moment?
Well, we started off originally speaking to customers that we already knew and kind of contacts and network. The media industry is relatively small in essence. And what we found is that it's the new startup type businesses, the ones that have got an online or digital first strategy that are really embracing cloud. So great examples would be Copper 90. I think they're the largest independent football channel in the world now. Huge cloud strategy and big on large data and large video. We're also doing Formula E's global distribution. That's the world's first electric vehicle race and it's just blowing up, huge growth every year. And we also look after Little Dot Studios, part of All3 Media Group. They started out around the same time as Base doing YouTube video channel management, and now they've got enormous teams, enormous turnover, global offices, and absolutely smashing it. So yeah, those are the types of businesses where we fit best, but we're looking after big corporate companies, major high street brands, broadcasters, production houses. So kind of anyone who deals with digital video files tends to be on the platform.
The brands are quite an interesting new one actually, because they're moving into this kind of video sphere, not really realizing that they're becoming video production companies. But more and more now, their adverts, the training content, any content they put out, it is video. And they're starting to have thousands of videos and be competing with some of the smaller production companies. And they don't realize they need the same tools and services that broadcasters have had access to for years. So actually now they're contacting us saying, okay, we have this problem. We understand you've solved this for broadcasters and production companies for years. How can you help us to do it? And they literally are. Some of the companies have actually got in-house studios like this one, and need all the same tools, and we've got them ready to go.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We've actually discovered that, and no matter whether you're a high street brand or a big film studio, they've got exactly the same technology requirements. Because what's happened over the last decade or so is all of the software and the hardware and the various services have converged into very similar workflows. So you could be literally kind of a one-person band freelance video team working on Adobe Premiere using the same tools as a huge film studio like Disney. And it's really an interesting kind of time to be in the tech space for media.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you describe Base Media Cloud's architecture and the multi-cloud approach?
That's one for you.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So if we take multi-cloud just to start with, everyone before thought that if you went cloud, you either had to be fully on-premise or fully in the public cloud. But actually there's a number of different models that have emerged. And the first one was like hybrid cloud, where you could have half of your solution potentially on-premise and then half in the public or private cloud. But for us, like multi-cloud is like a hybrid between on-premise, private, and all of the public clouds. And that means you can take advantage of all of the benefits that each of those platforms offers. So with us, for example, we've got customers where they have a media asset management system managing or syncing their assets on-premise that are synced up into through our private cloud onto IBM public cloud storage. And then from there, they might have encoding in AWS, they might have remote editing in Azure, and maybe AI services or other services in Google. Now, if you were to go and do it the normal way, where you deploy it all in one cloud, you would incur egress fees and costs to move between the clouds, or you'd just be forced to be locked into that one environment to avoid those fees and make do with solutions that are still good, but maybe not a best fit for your workflows. So for us, by having this multi-cloud architecture, you can get the best of each of the different solutions, no matter where they reside, without having to pay those kind of penalties for moving content around. And actually, by keeping it in that one place with us, the workflow timetables are a lot shorter, because you don't have to move files around. Everything can access those files from one spot, and it's only when you come to distribute the files and deliver them onwards to a customer that you actually have to move the files.
Yes, the architecture that Damon's put together with the team is very much about reducing all of the cost of networking for the customers. So we mentioned egress there. Base were the first company I'm aware of in cloud services that just eradicated egress fees, API call fees and retrieval fees. We've been doing it since we launched the company. Because if you're a media company and you have to move hundreds of terabytes of data, like Copper90 at the World Cup last year, did 100 terabytes of transit just during the tournament between Russia, US and London.
Wow.
If we'd have charged egress fees, it would have been a few $100,000 just to move the video files. And for a few £1,000s, they were able to do 100 terabytes of traffic in a month. So the network design is actually commercially driven. It's about making cloud accessible to media companies and getting rid of some of those horrible, scary, spiky costs that come up.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies that have media requirements these days will just go to AWS or go to Azure. Is that the key benefit of going to a specialist like you guys?
Yeah, it's really about getting rid of the surprises. So we've actually been approached recently by some pretty huge media organisations who have been scared off the cloud because they went direct, they put in their credit cards, they had their engineers build out solutions, and all of a sudden, tens of thousands of pounds of bills coming through unpredictably. And our approach means that it's more flat price per terabyte, it's more predictable SaaS revenue. So we can actually work with them and say, if you take the solution, it's going to cost you this much for this year. And we can be really, really detailed. We work with the Football Association and the FA in the UK. And every year we map out their storage forecasts. We work out how much they're going to be backing up and how much they're going to be archiving. And every year consistently, we've been within 2% accuracy of our forecasting. Right. So we're good at actually helping companies figure out how to budget for the clouds and get rid of some of the less predictable side of it if you go public on your own.
A lot of people actually, they'll go onto the AWS calculator to try and calculate what their costs of migrating to the cloud might be. And it's really difficult. You almost need a degree to kind of work that out. But if you just put in the amount of storage you need, what kind of servers and that, you can get a rough idea. But then actually, no one really tracks how often they download a file or move a file. They know how much they maybe got on the storage, but how many times do I deliver that one file out? So it's very much finger in air. As you're mentioning, ours is a flat fee, so it's very clear as to what it's going to cost you, no matter how many times you deliver it to places. But also there are ways to deploy in the cloud that people don't really understand. So if you go and do it yourself, they might go, oh, this encoder that I use, it's on 24/7. So let's see what it would cost to run it 24/7 in the cloud. And yes, the public clouds are pay for what you use, but if you need that to be available any time of the day, you're paying for it for 24/7. Yeah. Whereas with us, a lot of our solutions are truly pay for what you use, because we will keep them on and multiple servers for redundancy. They'll all be on 24/7, and then when you use them, you'll get charged for your usage at that time. So it ends up being much more cost effective and predictable. And this is all better for our spiky kind of project workflows, because it's constant. There'll be a production here, a production there, an episode here, an episode there. Yes, there is a constant throughput, but there's always spikes that you need to handle. And if you build to cater for those spikes and leave that running all the time, that's very expensive. But if you actually only pay for what you need when you need it, actually should mean that the cloud becomes cheaper for you than doing it on premise, or if you were to deploy it the current way and just lift and shift that into the public cloud.
So you mentioned kind of cost savings there, but what are the other driving forces that are kind of driving companies to use cloud and online services in the media industry?
I would say the choice now. So we all know cloud's been around for over a decade. Amazon were the first to market and have absolutely grown to be the market leader. But now there's a huge amount of other niche companies. All the big companies like Google, Amazon, Azure, IBM are all getting into the market and providing very specialist elements. And because media companies are all very different, every single company we speak to asks for something slightly nuanced. So one company might just want to do backup and disaster recovery, another might want to do streaming, or another might want to do Adobe editing in the cloud. And depending on what they need, we can kind of pick and choose the right parts. So yeah, I would say it's really about choice. That's a big driver. it's also around companies' rents and costs of running premises going up. So, for example, in Soho, I used to have a post house in Soho, and before I left that business, and it was taken over, our rent doubled every year, and our business rates doubled every year, and it was just unsustainable. So we've kind of got first-hand experience of why you'd want to move to a full online model, and we're hearing that message come back more frequently now in meetings. I had a meeting yesterday with a firm in New York, and the CTO said, I just want to get all of the kit out of the building. He just wants to have 0 clients and an internet pipe and all of the stuff on base, and that's really becoming quite fashionable now.
Yeah.
I think as well, when we moved from tape to file, it very quickly started shifting from broadcast engineering kit that was bespoke for broadcast into kind of commercial off-the-shelf IT hardware. And I think the last phase of that has been the shift from SDI, video transmission, through to IP. So now it's very much an IT problem. It's still solving broadcast problems, but the solution is an IT solution. And that means then you've got to retrain your existing broadcast engineers to have an understanding of how to make the most of IT hardware. And actually a lot of these digital first companies have a very limited on-site IT staff base, and they're normally like focused on desktop support, not necessarily like NAS management or server management and evaluating all these tools and solutions and deployment. So by kind of moving over to the cloud, you can take advantage of the fact that all of those IT problems, or most of them, up to the point of the platform at least, is taken care of for you.
Yeah.
So you can actually work with a much less technical and a much smaller team on premise. And then if you take a managed service with us, everything beyond that, so the solution selection, deployment and configuration for your workflow is also then taken care of. So then your business can just focus on what it's good at, which would be like in the media industries, the production. So you can have excellent creative staff that are great at producing the videos, but they don't have to know anything about IT. Whereas if you split your costs and you have half the people in your IT stack and half the people in productions, I'm not necessarily meaning you get half the quality of production, but you should really focus on what you're good at and kind of lean on us to give you the best IT that's going to enable you to deliver those in like a quick and easy and cost-effective way.
Sure.
So the other 2 main reasons why people are moving to the cloud, security, huge thing. So we were a founding member of the Digital Production Partnership committed to the security program a couple of years ago, along with Box and Amazon and some other really huge companies. And our belief is that if you put your media into the cloud and you build it in the correct way, and you add on things like multi-factor authentication and fingerprint access to your data, then it's super, super locked down. Whereas we have companies that we know who literally have their most important media libraries on hard drives in the cupboard in the office, 1 copy.
Yeah.
And there's horror stories all over the industry of people who've had fires or floods or thefts or whatever, or drives just stop spinning, and it's pervasive right across all of the media companies, big and small. So we really firmly believe that security is a big driver. The other thing is that the whole industry is moving towards video streaming. So we've all seen the rise of Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple just announced their new TV channel. So our industry, which used to be traditional linear broadcast, is now all about video online. And if you're delivering video for the consumer online, it makes sense that all of the bits of the workflow back to that delivery point are cloud side. So for us, it would be, someone's watching the movie on the screen at home and it's streaming over their internet. Prior to that, it would have been quality checked and mastered in the cloud. Prior to that, it would have been edited in the cloud. And prior to that, it would have been ingested and stored in the cloud. So, we're really building services that are relevant to the modern online video marketplace.
So guys, without naming any names, can you give us some examples of where firms have perhaps struggled with security in the on-premise world, and how you're helping with that in the kind of cloud world of digital video?
Sure, yeah. So there's been a number of customers where a lot of customers still rely on hard drives that will just be sitting around on desks in piles or in a cupboard in the corner. And it's so easy to just walk into those offices. A lot of the time you can just walk straight past reception, just go grab one of those drives, walk back out, or I'm just here to collect something, or I'm doing a delivery, and just grab it and walk out. And that's a top-end movie that's just been leaked, or it's just not good for brand reputation, let alone the cost of producing the asset. And sometimes it's the only copy of the asset as well. So at the very least, a big recommendation is to have an off-site backup. And there's been a couple of cases where this has actually been really important for customers, because there was one where they suffered a ransomware attack and all of their content on premise on their NAS was encrypted. And if they didn't have they had a backup copy with us in the cloud, so they were able to just say, sorry, not paying the ransom, deleted all their content on site and
Wow.
just downloaded it from us. So otherwise they would have had to pay a large fee to get that decrypted. And there have been a number of companies that haven't had the offsite backup and have literally either had to pay that ransom or have just lost all of their content. So yeah, it is. That's just like one of the benefits of having that cloud backup. But also, if you think that physical security of getting access to that hard drive that's sitting on the desk, we aren't even allowed to access our racks sometimes in the private data centers we work with, and in the public clouds not at all. So we have to book a ticket for a specific time. We go in, we have to have our fingerprints and our faces scanned, and it has to all check out for us to just get through the first door, let alone the other doors we've got to get through beyond that. It's another level compared to what people have on premise. And I often say it's because offices are designed for people to work and data centers are designed for data and security. And trying to marry those two up, by making it easier for people to get into the office so they can get to the desks and work, is also making it easier for them to get to your IT kit and then compromise your data.
You're not going to socially engineer your way into a data center, are you?
No, no chance. There was a time recently where I couldn't get into our own data center, and I got left outside for a couple of hours because this guy on security was just not having it. But the other thing is, if you go further up the stack, from a software point of view and like online access, so it's true that if you just leave your web application wide open, or if you share your password, or you give someone else your login details, you're basically opening the door to your data. And so we tend to train and advise customers a lot on their security best practice. And the number of times we've seen companies emailing a password to a group email chain, and we have to sort of call them out on it. So what we've actually now put in place is multi-factor authentication as a standard offering. We've integrated with Okta platform that's available as part of the base Media Cloud platform. So for the companies that are taking it very seriously, their staff can only get onto the apps if they actually have their phone and they put in their fingerprint or a PIN code and off they go. And I think that this is a fairly new thing in the media industry, because it is the type of business where people are used to just grabbing a drive off the shelf, plugging it in and working. And we're trying to encourage them to be more disciplined. But the fact is those tools are now readily available in the cloud, and it's low cost to do. It's really about putting best practice and convincing staff to operate in a sensible way.
That's fantastic to hear that actually the use of the cloud is making things a lot more secure. How about collaboration in this space? We know that kind of collaboration is really big with Google Docs, for example. Is that possible with large video files?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't a few years ago. In fact, if you wind back kind of 10 years, most people were still using FTP. They might have had really strong solutions like a Spirit or Signiant at the time, which would have been on-premise. We now deploy all of those types of tools in the cloud. So for an example, the most basic service that we would do would be file sharing and collaboration. So you'd have a cloud storage bucket, you'd have an Aspira portal or a Signiant portal or a File Catalyst portal on top with your company logo on it. And you can upload, download and share content globally at the highest possible speeds. And the way we've designed our network, as fast as your internet can go in your building is as fast as you can transfer your files. So we've got clients regularly doing hundreds of terabytes of traffic a month, whereas in the old days that just wouldn't have been realistic. And then if you take it a next level up, the media library services that we do allow you to actually open up the videos and play them, add metadata, share them with your teams. For example, send a movie for exec approval, and the exec can watch it on their iPad, type notes, add markers, and then send it back to the team. And this stuff is now just off the shelf, and it's designed in such a way that the user interfaces are very intuitive. It's kind of as easy as using Google Docs, right?
Yeah. And some of our customers, you're saying being able to go at line speed, some of them are in locations in the UK where they can't actually get that good an internet connection, and the cloud is actually enabling collaboration for them, because they'll upload the content to us once and then deliver to like 700 plus different endpoints afterwards. So by hosting it in that central location, everyone can access it. But if they had 700 different customers and collaborators trying to access on their site, the internet just couldn't handle it. So they actually use ours to distribute it further. There was also an example last week I was discussing with a customer who's very quickly spinning up offices all over the world, and they've got an example they need to collaborate in Amsterdam, in London, in Poland, and we're talking about them doing remote editing. So instead of having to send, what they do now is they'll copy stuff to a hard drive and mail it off to those different offices. Instead of doing that, they could upload it once to the cloud and then use one of our solutions, Bebop, to do remote editing. So it's in one copy on one shared cloud NAS, and then editors in Poland, in Amsterdam and in London could all edit off of the same files at the same time. So it's a single copy being shared across multiple countries, whereas right now you would have to deploy your IT stack and have a NAS in each of those countries and edit suites in each of those countries, and the cost of that becomes cost prohibitive. And they were having really big problems with version mismanagement, which, as you're saying, like Google Docs isn't really a problem because you're all working off the same version. So now by having that all centralized, you get rid of a lot of the problems that these international offices end up facing.
It's a good point. And the other benefit is if you have got international regions, offices, and you've got people even working from home, if you do have all your data in the middle in the base media cloud storage hub, you're saving a load of money, because if you've got to replicate that file storage in 3 countries, you've got to go buy the hardware, you've got to host it, you've got to rack it, power it, support it, and it's not cheap. You know, the sorts of capacities we're talking about are multiple hundreds of terabytes. So you're looking at multiple hundreds of thousands of pounds or dollars to buy the hardware. Whereas when you put it into the cloud, you're paying kind of pennies per gigabyte. And when you finish your project, then the costs go back down. So I think, for companies that have got regional teams that all collaborate, then cloud is really well suited.
And this company I was referring to, actually, they have one IT team in London that's able to then support all of the different global offices. They might have like a very small IT support contingent in each of those offices, but effectively they don't have to have all of that expertise and it will be available all the time. They can offer that out of their London office where they've got most of their staff, and in those small hubs, because they're all using that same central resource that's being supported by one place, it makes it much more cost effective than having to not just replicate the kit, but replicate the people to maintain all of that in each of the regions.
Yeah, far lower IT overheads, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned some of the global partners you're working with, like the likes of IBM, Arrow, you mentioned Okta earlier. What's the benefit of building a really specialist solution on the platform of some of these global brands?
You put it really well this morning.
Yeah, so I think the phrase I used was standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
So guys like IBM have spent hundreds of millions on IT kit to build one of the best public clouds there is available. Now, if we were to try and go and do that, we'd have to have hundreds of millions, but by partnering with them, we can actually just go and build on that and deploy solutions so much faster, because they've spent years and years working out all the deals, they're provisioning it all, preparing the data centers, deploying all that. For us, if we want an extra server or some more storage, it's pretty much instant. So when we get a new customer come along, we can provision services like in an hour, or if they want additional storage, it's self-expanding. So we can take advantage of their investment and offer best-in-class tools to them. And I think if you were to name like maybe the top 10 IT companies over the last 20 years, IBM is going to be one of those ones you think of. And being able to offer like an IBM SLA to our customers as well and say, this is IBM level quality of kit. It's the same stuff that you would have spent millions of pounds on yourselves to build in-house or worked with IBM to build and deploy. Now it's just ready to go immediately, and not just the kit, but actually all the solutions you need. And if that's not the right fit for you, we'll recommend that one, but all pre-deployed and ready to go on top of best of breed solutions on top of best of breed kit. Yeah. It's the way to go. There's no point in buying and building on site anymore. It just doesn't make sense.
That's on the infrastructure side, but then if you go up into the software side, our business model since day one has always been to partner with the best software companies around the world. So instead of us trying to have an enormous team of developers building everything from scratch and having a kind of a one-stop solution that never works, we've got all of these microservices essentially, or they're actually individual SaaS services, but microservices are perhaps a good way of looking at it. So each individual tool on the base platform is provided by a specialist vendor, and they've got huge development teams who are very good at building that particular tool. So every single bit of the stack, from when you log in to when you log into a particular portal to when you upload to a particular data center, is the best possible component. And because we buy at such large scale, for example, we have an ESA agreement with Arrow to buy through our IBM cloud solutions. We're buying so much of this stuff and we're multi-tenanting it for lots of small companies, which means the smaller companies get the benefit, and it's actually cheaper to buy a media cloud solution from us than it is to go directly to the vendors, which is crazy, but it's just the economy of scale that we can provide. And so we're helping a lot of small businesses that maybe wouldn't have afforded cloud off their own back because they don't have engineers, they don't have big IT budgets. They can start with base for like £100 a month and gradually scale up over time.
And I take it they're gaining from the expertise as well, rather than just going directly to the vendor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll actually sit with customers. We've got some good partners like Barry at Copper 90, for example, always meeting up and just talking about, they've always got like 20 different projects on the go, and most of them are IT projects. And it's just good to just have a chat, see where he's going, see what we can do to help. And sometimes it's not always us, but we can make some recommendations. But often, like, we help with the kind of business strategy and the IT strategy for them to help kind of shape the direction of where they're going. So it's more than just, right, I've got this vision, I want to kind of go and do it. How can I maybe go and deploy some random servers and storage to support that? It's we can help with that whole kind of holistic vision. And a lot of the time, that's just part of the service. And then if they do need some additional consultancy help, we can do that as well.
So what does the future look like for Base Media Cloud? And what advice would you give to prospective clients and partners that would like to work with you?
So we are continuously looking at all the new technology that's coming out, and we're working with vendors to broker deals, integrate new solutions, get stuff built. And because we started in 2015, and actually we've been working on it for a few years before that, so we've been in cloud before it was fashionable. We've gone through all the headache and the pain and the heartache of trying to figure this stuff out. So the future looks like Base becoming the preeminent media cloud services provider, because we started it. We were the first to kind of get out and do this. But also from an advice point of view for companies, if they're looking to move to the cloud but not quite sure which tool to choose or how to do it, just ping us an email or pick up the phone. And we tend to, initially we'll do a friendly kind of consultancy session, find out what the requirements are, give them some advice. We typically then move to kind of demo and trial, and then we can very quickly provision services. But it's not scary. I think the thing is, IT and cloud to a lot of media companies can seem quite terrifying, but it's actually very easy, and we're trying to make it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think it helps because we've come from the broadcasting industry ourselves. It's just a case of you literally just have a coffee, discuss what you're trying to achieve, and we can kind of talk in the same terms. So instead of, like, we can show you some IT diagrams and architectures if you want to, but really actually just showing a nice user interface. All of our stuff, actually, the customers that are using it are non-technical, they're production staff. Yeah. They'll just be interacting with their files and with the solutions through a web browser. It's so nice and simple. If they just give us a call, we'll come sit down, show you through the options, and it really, there's nothing to be scared about at all.
So if someone watching this does want to talk about their workflow and how they might move to the cloud, or if they just want to strike up a chat with Base Media Cloud, where can they find you, and what's the best way of reaching out? So
go to our website, base-mc.com. In fact, if you're on the website, click at the bottom for the info panel and get in touch with the sales team. And we also do regular events, so keep an eye out on our own internal events that we host with IBM in South Bank. We're also at the Media Production Show each year, IBC in Amsterdam, and yeah, pretty much every major media show, one of us or two of us will be there to come and have a chat.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.